The top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee has warned that China and Russia would seek to exploit the chaos resulting from a U.S. default. He further cautioned that the U.S. dollar's reserve currency status could be eroded if the U.S. defaults on its debt obligations. The top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee has warned that China and Russia would seek to exploit the chaos resulting from a U.S. default. He further cautioned that the U.S. dollar's reserve currency status could be eroded if the U.S. defaults on its debt obligations on Sunday. Yellen also warned on ABC's This Week that if Congress fails to act on the debt ceiling, it could lead to a constitutional crisis with implications
for the rich and cheaper for the poor. Can you give us an update on fuel discount plans and what the IMF is saying about this?
Well, we originally thought that it was a much simpler idea because previously when we were negotiating with the IMF and the bank was also supporting the negotiations, we put together a plan in which we charged a higher price for gas, for natural gas to the rich and lower price to the poor. So in essence, we were subsidizing the poor by charging a little bit more to the rich. And our proposal here exactly was trying to do the same thing that we were doing for the gas sector. We thought we'll charge the rich, people who drive expensive cars, a little bit more, and poor people who drive bikes and carry like 2 or 3 children on the bike, we'll charge them a little bit less and give them a little bit of relief. But I understand that IMF had some reservations, so we are very open to sitting with them and explaining the program and making sure that they're satisfied with it.
During the IMF talks also, there was a plan shared to reduce debt in the energy sector as well by asking state-owned companies to issue dividends. Can you give us an update on what's happening on those plans?
Well, what we ended up doing was that through the plan that I've just shared with you, where we were charging the rich people a little bit more, our industrial sector a little bit more, and subsidizing the poor, we were able to take care of the circular debt, or we were able to take care of the debt which was very difficult to finance. And we couldn't push that price on to the end consumers. Our regulator would not let us do that. So we very successfully got rid of that circular debt, or debt that could not be financed, or debt that couldn't be charged to the end consumers. So we successfully did that. But that only took care of the flow, which basically meant that we were not contributing to the circular debt anymore. However, the stock that we had, we thought that many of these companies owed each other a lot of money because most of the sector is dominated by state-owned enterprises. And some of these companies had account payables, and some of these companies had account receivables. So our thinking was that we would actually do the equity swaps or issue some dividends and pay off so that the circular debt, or the debt that different companies owe to each other, is taken care of. So that is also in progress. We're still working on it. We're coming up with a mechanism of issuing dividends and then using those dividends to pay off the debts and clean the books. So the whole idea is to clean the books. And
how long will that
the
take?
general idea is to, sorry, pardon me?
How long will that take? What's the timeline?
Well, I mean, it would take a little while. I mean, we are not in a rush. Our biggest problem was the escalating debt, and that we have stopped. So right now, there's zero contribution to the circular debt. So we have seized the flow of circular debt. Now, in terms of the stock that we have, we're very comfortable that in a couple of months we'd be able to sort it out. And we also want to make sure with our petroleum scheme, we saw that IMF had some queries and they had some concerns. So we want to make sure now that if we move forward, we take care of their concerns and make sure that they completely understand what we're trying to do and why.
Minister, we've talked a little bit about the tough decisions that your party has had to make when it comes to energy prices, electricity prices, and of course the fight against inflation is never a popular one. Can you give us an indication of how you're feeling towards election results? What are the chances for the party, and do we have an update on when they would be held?
I think the elections would take place towards the end of this year. The term of the government, of this current administration, finishes around October, and I think that would be the end of the 5-year term, and the elections would take place exactly on time. I think we had to make a bunch of very difficult decisions, and as you mentioned, the inflation is high. It's a poor country with high inflation, but it was flirting with extreme economic difficulties when we took over. So we've been pushing the envelope, and I think we're trying to restructure the economy as we go along. So we're reasonably confident that as we move forward, we'd be able to provide a little bit of relief. And our mantra is also very simple. We charge the rich people a little bit more and provide relief to the poor people of Pakistan, and we think that is the right thing to do. And if we continue to do that, then people would begin to appreciate the hardship that the administration or this government is going through, that people are going through, and they would begin to have hope, and through that hope, we'd be able to win the hearts and votes of people.
One of the hopes for emerging markets is obviously the recovery that's nascent in China, and I know that China and Pakistan and Afghanistan have just agreed to expand and deepen cooperation, including when it comes to the China-Pakistan economic corridor. What are your thoughts on the economic cooperation here at a time when there's a lot of focus and scrutiny over how Beijing deals with debt restructuring for poorer nations?
Well, our thinking is simple. We took a lot of debt to do what the government should be doing, which is build the infrastructure. And I think we were able to build an enormous infrastructure between 2013 and 2018. I think it's now time now that we have a port, a new port, we have the road infrastructure, and most importantly, we have the energy infrastructure. I remember in 2013, when I originally joined the cabinet, we were having about 12 to 16 hours of blackouts, or load shedding, as we fondly call it. And then over the next 5 years, we were able to completely get rid of this menace of load shedding. And that contributed to economic growth, right, because we were able to provide energy to our industrial sector, to our commercial sector. New businesses were created and new jobs were created. Mm-hmm. And now we're trying to do exactly the same. With the infrastructure that we have put together, now our hope is that with a little bit of financing, we'd be able to do startups. We have new industrial zones. We have no economic zones. We have export promotion zones. We have technology zones. And these are zones where, the taxes are very low. And we are hoping with a little bit of additional financing, we'd be able to do the proliferation of new businesses and, right, consequently job creation and economic growth.